Hello everyone! If you can hear me, say yay! This took a lot of tries to get it working. I want to say like 10 tries to get YouTube working today. For some reason, YouTube was not happy. But how are you all? Thank you so much for joining me on another live stream. Today's live stream is gonna be about data fetching and React best practices. Finally, after 6th, 7th try. Hello, Akash. Hunar, first time viewer, I'm guessing. How are you? Kodesh, Aziz. How are you guys? Thank you for joining me. What a day. Aditya, you back to Canada. I'm back to US. Okay, how many of you were here yesterday? And that'll help me do a recap of yesterday's content or just keep going. So if you were here yesterday and you remember what we were doing, just tell me I was here. Viewer index is 0. Always. Constant. Oh, also, we have a new mod in chat today. Azimuddin Aziz. Let me bump up your privileges. Hold on. Let me go to YouTube, add you as a mod. Okay, how many of you were here yesterday? I see Aziz was here. Who else? If you were not here, you can say new. Add as a moderator. Okay, I see some new people. Vinicius, Abhishek. Thank you for joining me. I was partially here. That works. Partially here counts. New, I was only on for like 2 minutes. No problem. Which is good to hear because that means that I can do a recap just to begin with. Let me also share my slides here on the side. Get myself set up. All right. And I'll also open up Excalibur, which was super helpful yesterday. Okay, so if you were here yesterday, get my attendance score. I should mark attendance like in school. Okay, so if you were here yesterday, I want to know if you remember any of the React best practices we talked about. So if you remember a React best practice that we shared yesterday about state management, write it down in the chat, whatever you remember. Let's see, who remembers any React best practice? Keep state as close to the component, correct? 10 points for Aziz. Oh, you know what would be super fun? If we had like a point score at the top and we could assign points to people as you answer questions. Because we ask so many questions. Use React Vanilla wherever possible. Another 10 points. Granular state management, correct. 10 points, Akash. I'm glad that you remember granular state management because that is one that we often forget and that can lead to a lot of re-renders. I'll talk about like it in quickly in a second. But that's a good one. Create granular dependencies, yes. There's one more. One more. Actually, I don't even remember the last one. Oh, yes, I remember. Oh, no, wait. Okay, I'll just share. The last one is one source of truth. So even if you have multiple state management libraries, make sure that you have one source of truth. Sorry, if you have state in different places, just make sure that you all have it in one source of truth, and that's the one that's retrieving state from different places. Also, just a heads up, I'm still a little sick, so if my voice is low, just let me know that you can't hear me, and I'll try to speak louder. Sorry for joining late, no problem, but like your consistency. Oh, thank you. I'm trying. Okay, before we get started, quick announcements and quick introductions, I guess, if you're new here. Why don't I actually start from here? My name is Shruti Kapoor. I am a front-end engineer. I used to be at Slack. Now I am an ex-Slacker and a full-time content creator. I bring to you tech content with a side of comedy. All of the content is going to be available on YouTube channel, or you're probably watching this on Twitter. Actually, if you're watching this on Twitter, tell me Twitter in the chat. And if you're watching this on YouTube, say YouTube in the chat. Let's see where you guys are from. Hi, Namir. Welcome back. Dark Soul, welcome. How are you? Okay, are you on YouTube or are you on Twitter? Tell me in the chat. And if you're on both, say both. YouTube, I see you, Vinicius. I'm going to change the font of this. Both. Nice. Okay. There. That's better. All right. So YouTube. Mizaner. Oh, hey, Mizaner. I see that you're new here. YouTube. Aziz on Twitter. Akash on both. Thank you, guys. Cool. Okay. So, yes, you can find us live streaming on Twitter and YouTube. We have a pretty cool community, I would like to say. Before I get started into the web practices, I do want to mention that we have a raffle going on, which you will see on the ticker on this side. This ticker. Hold on. This ticker. We are, I don't know why I keep saying we. It's like there's like multiple people live streaming, but we as in the community. There's a React conference happening in Amsterdam on June 13th, React Summit. I'm actually going to show you the conference itself. It is going to be an amazing conference. I was there for the React Summit New York, and it was such a fun conference, but the talks were amazing. There were people from the React community, like from the React core group. And this time there's going to be amazing people from the, I don't know if schedule was posted yet. Oh, it's already posted. This time there's going to be people from, there's going to be amazing people from the React community. Some of the people that I really admire are going to be there. And I'm super excited to be there. But we are also giving away one free ticket to this conference for free. And all you got to do is Make sure that you're a subscriber on YouTube. So you just gotta hit the subscribe button and you gotta comment raffle in the chat box in here. And that'll get you an entry into winning a ticket. I will be doing a raffle at the end of this week. So hit the subscribe button and comment raffle to get an entry to go to React Summit for free. This is on June 13th in Amsterdam. Got you, Yogi. I got your entry in. Let's see, what time is my talk? I'm doing a React panel about the future of React, which is going to be really, really fun. Last time we did this panel, panel discussion, state of React. We did this panel at React Summit in New York, and it was a really good panel because we talked about how to improve React, how to improve the community experience, some struggles of React, like the adoption of, like the lean towards Next.js, really spicy questions and some really informative questions as well. So I'm excited for that. I'm also giving a talk on becoming a staff software engineer. There it is. How to become a staff software engineer at 2:45. And Tanner is giving a talk on SPA to SSR and everything in between. Oh, that's going to be such a fun talk. So I'm super excited for that. All right. So let's get into it. What are we talking about today? Modern web best practices. And let's do a quick recap of what we talked about yesterday. So best practices is something that, so this talk is something that I gave at StrappyConf, and I wanted to share my decade worth of experience in this talk and kind of share some of the best practices that I learned and divided the best practices. Oh, hey, Vishal. Thank you for joining us. So I divided some of these best practices into 5 categories: state management, data fetching. State management is how you put state within the React application, how you manage state on the client side. Data fetching is how you call data and how you fetch an API and how to retrieve less data. Performance optimization is when you have the data and when you have a bundle, how do you reduce the size? How do you make it more performant? How do you optimize the code? You could use memo, use callback. There's other things like React Scan, React Profiler. But how do you make sure that your code is optimized? Code maintainability is that when we have written the code, how do we make sure that it is human readable, but also maintainable in the future as well? And accessibility is making sure that your app is inclusive for all. 5 main categories of best practices, and yesterday we talked about state management. So I'll do a quick recap. But before that, I am going to start our goal for today. Yesterday, our goal was to have 5 super subscribers. Super subscribers? I don't know what that is. Super chatters. I will set the goal again today. Today's goal is going to be a small one. I think we'll be able to reach this goal. Today's goal is going to be 1 super chat. Any colors, all the colors. And timer is going to be 2 hours. Post a Q&A session. Start goal. There you go. So today's goal is 1 super chat. I'm pretty sure we can do this. Anyways, let's get started. So state management, quick recap of what we talked about yesterday. When we think about state management, our first kind of idea is to think about which library we want to use. but you may not actually need a state management library. Yesterday, I gave an example of how we had an application of a form. By the way, if you missed yesterday's live stream, it's going to be in YouTube. You can go back and check out the first part of this live stream. I'll also link it in the section in the description at the end of this. So we also talked about, when I was working at PayPal, we had an application which had like 20 different fields, and we were using Redux to manage our state. But we ended up actually just removing Redux because we incorporated GraphQL, and because of that, we were actually only sending very little data to the client. So the use of Redux was not there. So we ended up just having React and GraphQL. And because we were using Apollo for GraphQL, Apollo comes with Apollo Cache, which was helpful to actually store the state that we needed on the client side. So this way, think about the data that you're sending to the client and rethink if you really need state management library. If you're creating a simple form structure, which doesn't have a lot of data that it needs to store on the client side, doesn't have a lot of interactivity, you perhaps don't need something external. Just React. Oh, Varun, thank you. You have helped us achieve our goal. Yay! Thank you, Varun. That was the closest goal, the closest or the shortest time it took to achieve our goal. Yay! Thank you, Varun. Okay, what was I saying? Yes, so you probably do not need a state management library. Also, I just want you to know that I am not looking at the chat right now, but if you have questions, please leave it in the chat. I will look at it periodically. So I'll look at it at the end of each section. So please leave your questions in the chat or any comments in the chat. So basically, the idea is that rethink what data you're sending to your client, and perhaps you don't need a state management library. So the whole theme of this talk is about don't give me your garbage. State management's best practices, I feel like, can be described by just saying, don't give me your garbage. That means if you don't have the need for some data, don't send it over to the client. But if you want to do state management with only React, with just native React, there are a few things available, which is use state, use context, and use reducer. And from there, if you feel like your needs are not being met by use state, use context, use reducer, and I'll talk about what those like decision points could be, you can introduce new state management, other state management libraries, external state management libraries like Zushtan and Jotai. We can also introduce Redux if there is a lot of client interactivity that we need to do. And here's a flowchart that I showed yesterday, which kind of talks about when to introduce a state management library. Now, this flowchart is I'm going to convert this flowchart into code and show you in examples how and when you need to add a state management library. So we'll start with like a basic component which has use state and use reducer, and as we add more functionality, we may need to add a context to share data between components. And then as we get more and more interactive with our components, context quickly becomes a performance hinderer, because it leads to a lot of re-renders. And after we have a lot of re-rendering happening, that's when we decide that we need probably Zushtan. And once we have Zushtan, the component works really well because you can just call it Zushtan, which is kind of like a lightweight Redux wherever we want to. As the component starts interacting with server, we realize that Zushtan is not the right choice. Then we probably need something that can work with the server. And that's when we introduce either something like TanStack Query or something like Redux. So this flowchart is gonna be converted into a video, into a code in form of a video. and that is going to be on my YouTube channel. I'm going to release it in June next month. So if you want that video, make sure that you subscribe to this channel. Sometimes you miss the videos as well, so hit that bell icon. I've found out that helps to get your videos in front of people. So go figure. Okay, so this flowchart, this is a really good kind of mental model to understand how state management libraries function and how and when we should use one. And this is going to be converted into code in the video. So stay tuned. So basically, that's when you think about whether or not you use state management. Now, when you need state management, when you do have the needs to actually add state management, the next best practice is also to make sure that state is close to the component. So we talked about this yesterday, and we talked about what's wrong with this. If you take a quick look here, you'll see that this component re-renders every time search term updates. So here in this component, we have actually 4 components. They will all re-render when state updates. Instead of that, we should actually move the state close to the component that actually needs it. And React's documentation, the best practice says that lift state up. But the caveat there is not to lift state up at the absolute maximum level, but rather to keep it close to the component that needs that state. So this is what this talks about. And now in app, because we have lifted state into the main content, which is actually the content that needs the state, we won't see any re-renders in app itself. And finally, we talked about managing dependencies granularly, which means here we talked about how React has a diffing algorithm. And if you have a question about that, put that in the chat as well. React's diffing algorithm actually takes a look at the previous state and the next state and compares them to. If it's a primitive value like a string, number, it's easier to compare. But if it's an object, React actually does a shallow check, which is it checks a few levels only. I think it checks the first level only. I forget how many levels it checks. But if it's a deep object, then it thinks it is not doing a deep check. It's only checking the first few levels. And so it thinks that it's a different object. And therefore, anytime the object changes, React re-renders. So we're causing a lot more re-renders if we're storing a really big object, which is why we need to make sure that we're storing granular dependencies, which is take out the property that we need from username, from user object, and only store that and pass that down to the component that needs it. And finally, if we even need multiple things, then make sure that we have one source of truth. If we have multiple, if we have Zushtan and use context and Redux everywhere, make sure that there is only one place where we're storing the state and everybody else kind of reads from it. And when we modify in one place, we also modify the source of truth. So we need to have only one source of truth. So that's what we talked about yesterday. And today we're going to talk about data fetching. Let me see if there's any questions in the chat. Hi, Likando. Onkar, welcome. Varun, Gachar, RAFFLE. Aniket, ma'am, keyboard. Oh, it is a Keychron K2. I really like this keyboard. Any idea why we need multiple libraries for data management? Any benefit or something? I don't think that using multiple libraries for data management is actually a good solution. However, when we have micro frontends, sometimes those frontends are actually with different teams, and they may choose to implement their own state management libraries. And in that case, we got to make sure that whatever you do in one component has to be updated in the main source of truth. No problem. Okay, any other questions so far? Then let's keep going. Again, if you have questions, just feel free to leave it in the chat. Okay, data management. We talked about don't give me your garbage for state management, which is don't send me a lot of, like, don't give me data that you don't need. Data fetching is all about don't make me wait. How so? I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it. Don't make me wait basically means that if I have asked for data, don't take too long to send that data over to the client side. And now there's multiple practices of making sure that that can happen. There's rendering strategies, and I'll talk about them in a little bit detail. But caching, which is I asked for data, I had previously asked for this data, so just give me the data that's already stored before. Like cache the data and just give me the data that was previously stored before. Routers also help in this because if you have already visited a route, they can either preload that data and get it ready for you, or they can even store that data for you and make it easier to be available. So routers help. Using the server is a really good technique in making sure that your data is ready before the client asks for it. So your data is ready on the server and you're doing all the heavy processing on the server before your data asks for it. And lazy load images, which is if you don't need the images right now, just wait for the images to load. Just wait to load the images. So first we'll talk about rendering strategies. Rendering strategies are actually four types, mainly four types. There's now like ISG and stuff, but kind of four types. On one side is client-side rendering, and on the other side is server-side rendering. And at this point, you know what? I'm going to draw Excalibur. Out of topic, but can you give an idea of how UState works internally? I could make a video on this. So hold on, I'm going to write this down. Also, a great point I want to say is that if you have any out-of-topic questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But also, our Discord is a really great place for discussions like this. bit.ly/Shruti Discord, that's where it is going to be. Internally. Oh, I'm starting to feel feverish again. But I will keep going. I think we'll do data fetching today and then we'll end after that. Thanks for modding, Aziz. I am new international student. I want to stand out from crowd. Kind of projects I need in my resume for React frontend and TP Modern Developer too. But I would actually highly suggest that you ask this question in our Discord. Okay, Excalibur. Let me bring this over here. Alrighty. So on one side, let me see if there's any other questions meanwhile. Okay, cool. So on one side, we've got the client. And then on the other side, we've got the server. Client-side rendering is bad, denoted with red. Server-side rendering is good. Why? From a completely performance optimization technique. Why? Because client-side is user's computer. First, we have to send a lot of data and then we have to process it on user's computer. So it depends on their performance speed. But also, every user may see different kind of performance, right? Every user's computer is different. Therefore, client-side rendering, not so good. Server-side rendering, better, because we have a big server, we can control it. Servers have more capabilities and processing speed than client computers. So as much as possible, we want to keep the stuff on the server. Now, the different React rendering strategies, I'm going to move this here. The different React rendering strategies actually go from, hold on, what is this, client side rendering, okay. Actually go from one side of the spectrum to the other side of the spectrum. So we've got client side rendering, which is actually on this side. Side rendering, I'm just going to use black for this, which we call CSR, which is how we like typically do with React. So you've got a React application, it's a single page application, you've got a form, you've got like maybe a few different like interactive buttons, you've got a button, you click on it, something else pops up, like everything is happening on the client side. That's client side rendering. On the other side, we have something called server side rendering, which is we generate everything on the server and we just send a complete HTML to the client. And the client or the client's browser just needs to display that page. It's just an HTML. So this is actually like current React things, React days. Right now we do, React is basically client-side rendering if you don't do anything else. And PHP days, if you remember, like we'll have like if you still write PHP, that's all done on the server. So that's server-side rendering. And now in between this comes everything else that we do. So what companies want to do is, or like what people want to do is do as much as possible on the server side and leave as little as possible for the client side. Now there's pros and cons to both approach. The pro is that client side, or the client side pro is that on the client is where you can do interactivity. So if you click on a button, you have JavaScript, you can actually perform interactions only on the client. But the problem is, actually I'll write this down as well. The pro is interactivity. But the con is that it is not good for SEO. Because your HTML is not generated yet, so the crawlers don't know what the page looks like. So your page is not good for SEO. On the server side, the pro is that it is fast processing. So the page is created, fast processing of HTML. So the HTML page is created pretty fast. But the con is, and because it is on the server, so good for SEO. And if you're in any kind of commerce, you know how SEO is so important. But the con is there is no interactivity. So what you want to do is actually strike a balance between the client and server side. And that's where all these other rendering techniques come in. So if this confuses you, raise your hand. If client-side rendering, server-side rendering, static-side generation, ISR, incremental site regeneration confuses you, raise your hand. Say yes, because it definitely confuses me. Is it different? It is different in Next.js on CSR. The techniques are the same. How you do it is different, of course, but the technique is the same. So confusing for some people. Okay, good. So in order to imagine a page being rendered, think, I see it's confusing for more people too. Cool. I love that coming in. Thank you for sharing. I think client-side rendering, am I too late? RSC going on. Hey, Sayan. No, not too late. How this thing's applied in Next.js versus Remix. That's actually a topic for another video or like another live stream. We'll get into it in detail, how things are different between Next.js and Remix. Today, we're going to focus on the concept itself, on the technique itself. So think of like page rendering or developing or creating a page as making food or rendering food. So your goal is to, at the end of the day, your goal is to put food on the table, food on the plate. You're trying to feed yourself, you want to put food on the plate. There's multiple ways of getting food, right? You could go to a restaurant and just have the food given to you. That is server-side rendering, in which you don't have to do any work. You just sit there, you order, and you get the food. Server-side rendering, you let the server do all the work for you. On the other side, you have client-side rendering, where you need all of the ingredients, and even before you start to make anything, even before you start to even before you can cook anything, you have to think about all of the groceries you need, all of the ingredients, you have to think about where to get them, you have to prepare them. Client-side rendering, too much work. So that is the end of the spectrum. So if you're ever confused between server-side rendering and client-side rendering is you're the one who's making all the food, everything, you have to get groceries. But if you are thinking about server-side rendering, you're letting the server do all of the work. You don't have to do anything. So you just offload the work to somebody else. Client-side rendering versus server-side rendering. So I hope that was clear. And these are all the groceries I could manage to put on the plate that day. I'll have a full tutorial on this. There's a lot of questions on like React.js or like Remix and Next and how all of that works. That is going to be a topic for another video, and I'll put that on YouTube as well. So stay tuned for that. But before we get there, client-side rendering is you do all the work. You do all the work. And server-side rendering is you let the server do all the work and you can just chill. Okay? In CSR, React just render everything in client, but Next just only hydrates in client side, but render on server unless forcing to fetch client side. Is it correct? So I think what you're confusing is CSR React versus how Next.js does CSR. The concept is the same, but the technique of how Next.js does client-side rendering is by forcing it to be client-side. So you are technically correct, but think about client-side rendering as a way to render data. Now, how Next.js does it versus how you do it in vanilla React, how you do it in TanStack, how you do it in Remix may be different, but the concept is the same. You want to render everything on the client side, right? You force it in Next.js, it automatically happens on TanStack. That is a different concept. That is a different point. But client-side rendering is when you render everything on the client side. Now, some frameworks are server default or like server by default. They render on the server by default, just like Next.js. And some are client by default, like React, TanStack. That is a different concept. But think about right now, focus on the concept, focus on the fundamentals. Don't focus on the technique so much right now. What means by interactivity? Interactivity is when you like click on something, like you have a button, you click on something, and then something else happens. Interactivity is how when a user interacts with the website. Anything that a user does, perform, any action they take, any input they type, that is called interactivity. Like the user is interacting with the website. If I have time, can you make video on how these concepts work in different React frameworks? Yeah, actually, that's the video I'm recording today, and I'm hoping to release it next week, which is client-side rendering to server-side rendering in Next.js. I actually have like all of the code ready for it as well, and after the end of this live stream today, I'm going to go record that, so stay tuned for that. But great to know that you want that video. Yes, some validation. Have you knowledge about quants? I don't know what that is. Hey Devon, good to see you again. Okay, where were we? Oh yeah, before I get into hybrid rendering, I'm just going to pause here to see if there's any other questions. Also, anybody wants to see Pepper? Oh my god, Pretty Little Baby, that song has been running in my head and all on my Instagram so much. Okay, I'm gonna show you Pepper. She's sleeping, look at her. Sleeping like a little baby. If someone is learning React, when should they jump to Next.js? When is a good time to make that leap? That's a great question, actually. So I'll give you my experience. Actually, no. I'll give you my experience and I'll give you what I think is the best practice. I think Next.js is a really solid framework. Solid framework. I think Next.js is a really great framework. Once you understand React and how it works, you'll start to notice that some of the concepts that it talks about, like React server components, server-side rendering, that is hard to do with just React itself, right? So you need the help of another framework. At that point, if you want to understand how this works, and if you have the need for those things, I would say adopt Next.js. If you're new to React, I would say focus on the fundamentals first. And once you have mastered the fundamentals, you've created some applications, you understand how to use React, then you can adopt a framework and see how React is used inside a framework and how to create applications with a framework. I do want to give you, now from my personal experience, having worked in corporate for over, I don't know, 12 years, we have never used Next.js in corporate. I worked at PayPal, I worked at TELUS, I worked at Slack, and we don't use Next.js. It doesn't mean that Next.js is not a good framework. It doesn't mean that we used a different framework. We actually never used a framework. We created our own thing, and like we had our own thing and we never needed a framework. So whether or not you will end up using a framework in a company really depends on the use case of that company. There's a lot of companies that are using Next.js, but I never had to use Next.js myself. My own website, shrutikapoor.dev, is actually built on Next.js. And the reason I built it on Next.js is because I wanted to learn how to use Next.js. So if you're learning it from a curiosity standpoint, once you've mastered fundamentals, go for it. But if you're thinking, I need to do Next.js, I need to learn Next.js, you don't. I would also say that if you're at the point of learning Next.js, you should also check out other frameworks as well, like Remix and TanStack Start, which and Solid as well, which are good alternatives to Next.js as well. But if you want to develop a React application and you want to really learn React, use just React. React also added server components in React 19. Is it good? We'll actually talk about server components as well in the performance optimization section of this. Oh my god. I thought somebody was inside the house. We'll talk about this in the performance optimization, and I'll explain what server components are. In concept, they are really good. When we need to use them and whether we have we still have a really good use case for them is not yet very clear. It's not yet very useful yet. That's what I would say. Oh, okay. I will also reframe. Rendering items on the server versus sending a server component, or like sending a React server component, is a different thing. So you can do a lot of stuff on the server and not have to create a React server component. So the need for actually having a server component is very little. And in fact, we actually had Tanner Linsley on one of our streams as well. We talked about exactly this thing, that the sliver where you need to use React server component is very thin, and we don't have a lot of use case for that yet. Do you want to redesign your website? It is very plain. If you need, let me know. I'd love to share a good design. Yes, please, Akash. I do need help with that. I need help with that and also maintaining it. My site is so outdated. Let me show you. Oh, I can't type anymore. When was the last post? December 21, 2024. And the videos are also not here. Yeah, I need help. Okay, so any more questions about CSR, ISR? All right. So here's your first question. Here's your question. What does CSR and SSR stand for? Oh, Varun, thank you. You're following me from AI real estate agent, every video giving me some insight. I'm aspiring more in that. Thank you, Varun. I appreciate you. Goal achieved. Yeah. Thanks, Varun. Okay, let's see. What did folks say? Um, Client server side rendering, correct. Exactly. CSR, client side renderings, SSR, server side rendering. Now, here's the next question. Actually, hold on. I'm going to create some multiple questions. So if you are watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this on Twitter, you may be able to put the question in the chat, but I would actually encourage you to come down to YouTube and answer the question in YouTube. We're gonna have Q&A sessions. Yay, Varun, thank you for becoming a member. Oh, I love to see the support. Yay. It makes my day. Okay, here is a question. Again, if you're watching this on Twitter, come on down to YouTube so you can answer this question and we can pick a poll. I will give you a few minutes. Hold on. Confirm. Poll. I have to have a poll. New. Start poll. Okay. Okay, option 1, option 2, option 3. Okay, here is the question for you. This is on YouTube. So come on down and pick a choice, which is, the question is, which of the following is a disadvantage of client-side rendering CSR? Slow page load and poor SEO, increased server cost, content never updates without refresh or F5, or don't know. And it's totally okay to pick don't know as well. So let's see what you think. And if you're watching this on Twitter and you don't have a way to come down to YouTube, you can also put the answer in the chat itself. Let's see what people say. increase CDN cost. You won't have CDN cost in client-side rendering. Okay, I'll give you 2 more minutes to vote. And if you don't know the answer, you can also pick don't know. Don't worry about it. Also, I just noticed that we are so close to being 4,000 subscribers. Oh my God. Oh, your support means so much to me. I can't believe that we are here already. We're so close to being 4,000. My goal is to get to 100K this year. That's what I'm aiming for. Let's go. Okay, so actually most people got the answer right. The answer is slow page load and poor SEO. End that poll. Okay, so you all got the answer correctly. Slow page load and poor SEO. And why is that a disadvantage of client-side rendering? We just talked about it because we are putting all of the JavaScript on the client. The client has to actually build all of that before it can actually see what the page is like. And because the crawlers are not present on the client side, on the user's computer, they don't know what the website is about. So poor SEO. So right answer. And before we get into the next part, I have another question for you. This question we actually did not discuss, but I think we can do it. Okay, new question coming up for you. This is going to be a very interesting question. So think about the answer a little bit, and even if you don't feel confident about your answer, just hit that option. There's absolutely no cost and there's no hesitation in this. So what if your answer is wrong? Okay, here's a question. Try to post on Twitter oftenly. Post reach is significantly higher there. Oh, okay. Thank you for the suggestion, Akash. Okay, here's a question for you. Which of the following, wait, where is the question? There it is. In SSR, when is the HTML content generated? During browser idle time, which is when browser is just chilling, after the page fully loads, on the server at request time, or only on the initial page visit? When is the HTML content generated? So pick an option. Even if you're not feeling confident about that option, that's okay. There is no cost to picking an option. Go ahead and pick an option. Okay, while you're picking an option, I also want to note that there's 520 of us watching this live stream right now. Holy shit. Okay, I want you to put in the chat where you're joining me from and what time is it there where you are. For reference, I am in Seattle, USA, and it is 11, what time is it? 11:23 a.m. here. So put in the chat where you're joining me from, what time is it there? Okay, I see Aziz, India, 12:53 p.m. Akash, Delhi, 11:53 p.m. Sayan, India, 23:53 p.m. Aziz, sorry, 11:53 p.m. Vinicius, Sao Paulo, Brazil. Oh, damn. Hi. Thank you for joining us from Brazil. 15:24 p.m. Aziz, my brain is going into sleep mode now. Just hang on there. Hang on there. We have how many slides left? We've got what? 1, 2, actually, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 slides left. Hang on there. You can do it. Okay, let's see what the poll says. Thank you for sharing, everybody. In SSR, when is the HTML content generated? During browser idle time, after the page loads, on the server at request time, or only on the initial page visit? The correct answer is C, on the server at request time, and all of you who did that are correct. Gurugram, 11:55 p.m. Oh my god, I was there like 3 days ago. Roadside Coda. I had no idea you were actually in Gurugram. I would have totally met you. Also, hey, Roadside Coder, look at you joining us in the chat. Thank you for coming. You guys, Roadside Coder's YouTube channel is awesome. You gotta go and subscribe to him. He is a great content creator, but his videos are so informative and so easy to understand. Shout out to Roadside Coder. Thank you so much for joining us. And if I knew you were there, I would have totally met you. I was there like 3 days ago. Next time. Okay, so the correct answer is on request time. And I'll explain to you how this happens. I think this is a simple like making a request to a browser. If you make a call to the browser understands that it needs to deliver that HTML. And at that point, it generates the code, it generates the page and sends it as a result of the response of that page. So you call the browser or you call the URL, you say, I need this index.html/products page. If it's a server-side rendered page, it's like, okay, I need to develop this page. It develops the page. Remember server-side rendering, server has to cook the food. So it cooks that page, sends it over as part of the response every time you call the server. So you get fresh food every time. Okay, why I have the slide up on the screen is because I want to talk about hybrid rendering. So remember we talked about like two ends of the spectrum, client-side rendering and server-side rendering. What we want to aim for is actually, I'm sharing the screen, right? What we want to aim for actually is kind of in the middle. Why? Because there's pros and cons of both, right? And client-side is also good because it gives you interaction right out of the box. So your page is like good to go. But then server side is also good because it processes HTML pretty fast and it's able to like make any API call request that it needs to do on the server itself super fast. So you kind of want to aim for both. And I want to talk about an example of a page where you can kind of do both and have the best of both the worlds, which is right here. So imagine that you have a e-commerce site and you have something like you have a page, think of like Amazon.com. You have, you're looking at a page or you're looking at a product and it has a bunch of details about it, like the price, the specifications, things like that. All of that needs to be pulled from like either a database or from an API, right? The price, the name, the manufacturer, all of that content can be done on the server side. On the server side, so you can render that content on the server, send that, and that can be done super fast and can be sent using server side rendering. Also, that stuff is on the server, so you can also have it optimized for SEO as well, and it'll be better for it's also better in this case because it's an e-commerce site and you want Google to crawl your pages. You also have the part at the bottom usually where you have similar products. Typically for a product, similar products don't really change a lot, right? You add once that this product is related to like 5 other products. You may need to change it like once in a while when you add new products, but typically it stays the same. It is static content. That part you can render, you can create SSG, we can statically generate that content, put it on the CDN, and once you need to fetch that component, you actually just send a pre-rendered or already developed part of the HTML and send that over. So you have a server rendered part, you do that on the server, you call the API, whatever you need to do. Some part which is static, you put it on a CDN, and anytime you need to like refer similar products, you just send that component over. It is generated as an HTML itself, you just send that HTML over. You also send the any assets that you need like CSS or images with it. So that's similar products. And then at the bottom, you have usually like a reviews page, a reviews component where you have like a star thing. It also has interaction where you like, if you click on 3 stars, it'll highlight 3 stars. If you click on 5, it'll highlight 5. That component looks super interactive, and there is a lot of, there's a lot of interaction that you need to do. Like if you write a review, it automatically posts at the bottom, or you may want to do filtering. So there's a lot of interaction that could happen there. You could also be sorting. You could also, there's usually like snapshot, no, not snapshot, summary of the reviews as well nowadays. So that feels like a component that needs a lot of interaction that you can do on the client side. So this way, you've broken something that could have been completely a client-side rendered app into a hybrid rendered app. You can do the server-side stuff. You can do the stuff that needs to call API and stuff that doesn't have a lot of interaction on the server, which is the product details page. You can do the content that is statically generated and doesn't change a lot on the CDN and put that HTML on the CDN, and anytime you need to call that component, just send that HTML over. And you can do the component that needs a lot of interaction on the client side itself. So that you can do using CSR. I know that there are some comments in the section. I will take a look in the comments. I will take a look at that at the end of this section. I want to get through this content. So before, but like, how do we do that? How do we do this hybrid rendering? At this point, we talked about some frameworks that can help you a lot, right? Next.js is actually a really good example here, and this is where Next.js is a good contender. I was talking about, think about why you need Next.js. This is why you need Next.js. So with get server side props, you can actually do all of that on the server. This is how you generate a server side component in Next.js. The static side part of it, you can use get static props to do get static side generation, and Next.js was automatically take care of generating it statically and just rendering that static content. Then on the client side, like that is just how we do React right now. You have use effect, so just continue to do React as is. You can also smartly improve, do a little bit better in client-side rendering by adding SWR, stale while revalidate. And that you can do with Next.js as well. So you can use SWR for that. And there's also ISR, which is incremental static regeneration. What that does is actually, I talked about that you have products and they update like once in a while, right? Like once in 5 days or once in 3 days or whatever it might be. If you're Amazon, your products update maybe more frequently. So what you could do is you could add incremental static regeneration, and that can be done by just one single line of code, which is revalidate, and you tell Next.js that I want you to re-fetch this or like validate this or get this product again at the end of this time interval, and you can specify the time. And this way you can make sure that you can have statically content, you can have content delivered statically, but also make sure that you're updating it frequently as you want. And that is kind of the best of both worlds of static generation while also making sure that the content is updated as well. Now, of course, you can do that with TanStack query as well. I was talking about the video that I'm going to create. So in the video, I'll talk about how to do this with Next.js and on how to do this with TanStack query as well. So stay tuned for that. There's also other things that these components, these frameworks provide you, like server actions, server components, streaming with suspense. I don't want to get into the detail of that today, but I'll hold that on for another live stream if that is of interest to you. So let me know in the chat if any of these are confusing to you or if you want to see any of them covered in either a video or a live stream. PPR, yeah, I saw PPR as well. I did not include it because honestly, I feel like it confuses more people, but I'll think about it. Hi, Kizzy, welcome back. No problem. I have recently implemented the hybrid rendering approach to show correct date on client based on their time zone. Ooh, awesome. Aziz, if you have an example of that, share it in the Discord server. Where does Astro Server Islands fit into this approach? Server Islands, honestly, I'm not very familiar with. But from what I know, Astro is very static content. So Astro Server Islands, I think, are more on the server side, are more on the interaction from, or like generate when a call is made. So it's more on the server side of the spectrum. But I'm not very familiar with Astro Server Islands. Actually, wait, server islands is when you like call an API and you can do any dynamic content. So they're actually on the server side as well. So Astro while being all on like the client side and like the static side stuff. Oh no, Astro while being all on the static side stuff, it adds a little bit of sprinkle of dynamic content using server side, using server islands. Okay, what other comments or questions do you have? We're about to wrap up this live stream today. So if you have any comments or questions, either from today's session or yesterday's session or something that you want me to cover, let me know now. I'm also curious to hear from you from the topics that you heard today. What do you want to see covered in a video, or what do you want to see covered in more detail? Shruti, are you going to go to Danny Thompson's conference in September? Commit your code. I actually really wanted to go to Commit Your Code, but I don't think I'll be able to. I have another conference that I'm going to at the same time. But the lineup is amazing, and if you're thinking about going, you should definitely go. You have any idea about using server components in React Native also? I actually don't use React Native, but if you want to understand server components itself, I can do a session on that. Yeah, I'm going to got my ticket. Awesome, Devon. I think you're gonna have a really great time. Okay, folks, I think this is gonna be the end of it. Today we talked about, actually let's do a recap of what we talked about. Let's start from the top. Today we talked about data fetching. We talked about the main kind of theme of data fetching being don't make me wait. There's 5 different techniques there's 5 different kind of buckets of data fetching. We talked about rendering strategies in detail today. I also told you about kind of the spectrum of where this lies. Client side being you do all the work, server side being you let the server do all the work for you. Client side is good because it adds a lot of interaction, and it's really good when you want to make interactive content, like we talked about review where the user is clicking a button, you want to show something right away. So it's really good for like really fast updates to the screen. Server side is good when you have to make a lot of processing. And when we say processing, it's like you have to fetch from the database, you have to maybe calculate something, you have to plot a graph. So you're not dependent on sending all of that data over to the client side and letting the client kind of do that processing on their computer. Servers' computers are usually faster and we have a lot more processing power, so it's much better to do that kind of stuff on the server. But not just that, it's also great because when you make a request on the server, you also let the crawlers talk, you also let the crawlers crawl the page, and it's good for SEO. Basic things and details like how CSR SSR works exactly in React and Next, hydration and reconciliation. Yeah, I said that I will make a video on this, actually, CSR SSR, and I'm going to shoot that video right after this, so feel free for that. And we also talked about a hybrid rendering approach in the sense that you don't have to pick one or the other side. You can have a component where you have some parts of it coming from the server, some parts of it statically rendered, and some part of it coming from client-side rendering as well. And Next.js actually lets you do that really well because it gives you things like get server-side props, get static props, and use effect that helps you do that. Vineet, I would recommend that you book a one-on-one call with me if you want to talk about it in detail. 5 months out of work, can't get shortlisted. We can take a look at your resume and we can take a look at how you're approaching recruiters. And we can take a look at your skills as well. So book a one-on-one call with me. Let me see if it's in the description. Yeah, it's in the description, topmate.io/shruti-kapoor08. Do you see any value in using SSR for apps that need authentication? That is apps where SEO is not a requirement. Yeah, like I was just saying, so SSR is really good when you have to do a lot of processing. Even for example, let's say that you are plotting a graph and you have a lot of data that you need to plot that graph. Now, instead of having to put all of that data and send all of that and have to do all of that processing on the user's computer, which could actually be a like small mobile device, you can render that on the server and just send that component over. So you're sending a like fully developed React server component. And this is exactly actually where React server component are super helpful. Somebody was asking what is the need of RSCs. So you have a lot of data that you need to render and you can't render that on client's computer because they could be using it on a phone. So you want to render that on the server, and then you have to send that as a component. So you have to send like a fully developed component over. So you send it as an RSC, React Server Component. Suggest some great project ideas, please. Vineet, we actually I think for a great project idea, I would say develop anything that inspires joy for you. I really like doing video player apps because I feel that it helps me understand a lot of the concepts of like rendering for things like that. Actually, in one of the next slides, I also have a video player. Like I'll talk about how to build a video player. So video player is actually a really good, like YouTube clone, something like that is a really good example. I would also say like, you know, like all of these, what is it called? System design interviews, they'll usually ask you to make a clone of something like WhatsApp clone or Slack clone or Netflix clone. Those are really great projects because they help you understand a currently working, currently scalable and deployable, scalable and enterprise level production app. They help you understand the architecture of a currently of a current enterprise. Ugh, my words are failing. I think I'm trying to fall like really sick right now. But I think what I would recommend is build one of these clones. Try a WhatsApp clone, try a Slack clone. Build something and it'll help you understand how these projects are made. You know what you'll start off with typically is start off on the client side and do everything on the client side with React, and you'll notice that your app is really slow. So you'll start to add performance optimizations and you'll start to put stuff on the server. And that is a really great way of understanding not only how to optimize your app, but also how different React rendering strategies work and how to actually make a production level app and what are the things you have to think about from a scalability perspective. So that's what I would suggest. Excalidraw is also a great project, yeah. Super client-side project. Holy shit. Almost spilled water everywhere, but all good. Give me 1 second. All right, with that, we're going to end today's stream. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. This was a wonderful stream. I had so much fun talking to you. And thank you so much for joining me today. Tomorrow, we're going to pick up where we left, which is we're going to talk about performance optimization. So if you are interested in that, stay tuned tomorrow. We're going to be back at 10 a.m. PST, same place on YouTube and Twitter. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, folks.